Sicklybod Crane by W. M. Cuppernell, Barking Dog, Safari Books, A Sleepy Hollow Tale. Please like, share, and subscribe for more stories. Part 1, The Legend Returns. Ichabod Crane's legend still remains. 235 years after the Headless Horseman rode his horse spitting fire, a decapitated ghost controlling the reins. On Halloween night, 235 years ago, a legend began that everyone knows. Ichabod Crane upon his horse Gunpowder, the hoof steps of the demon horse growing louder. Finally reaching the bridge, Ichabod Crane moved across in a frantic pattern, only to be struck from behind, from the Headless Horseman's fiery jack-o'-lantern. Whatever happened to Ichabod Crane, all that was left was smashed pumpkin remains. But that was not the end of this ghostly tale. Over 200 years since the schoolteacher was chased by a headless spirit through the wood trail. Part 2, The Descendant. There was another relative who traveled to Sleepy Hollow, hundreds of years removed. In Ichabod's footsteps he did follow, far removed his great-great-great-great-uncle's fame, an awkward man called Sicklybod Crane. Sicklybod Crane sat in New York City, loving the city lights that were so pretty, down on his luck, wanting to chill, wanting the riches, but couldn't pay the bill. He had a good job, but he had been fired. Soon the word came out. All his jobs ended 2 weeks after being hired. Then he got a call right out of the blue. He was hoping for a change of luck. That's true. A friend from high school, from long ago. He had lost contact, not in the know. Now reaching out after all these years, a reconnection that was sincere. I'm in Tarrytown, just 30 miles away. Make the trip. It's sure to pay. I'm making great money. There is more to follow. You can have a new start in Sleepy Hollow. Sleepy Hollow, the name struck a nerve in his family history from a long past uncle that got much more than he deserved. Sicklybod said, "Sleepy Hollow, that town causes a fear in me. I need to get caught up on my family history." The friend said, "Oh, go ahead and take your time, but it is called a legend, more likely a crime. When you look into your great uncle's demise, it was less likely a ghost than a robber's surprise." Part 3, Return to Boonesville. Soon he was heading south in his '57 Ford to a place he had long ignored, to a place where he grew up, known as Boonesville, North Carolina, a place not famous, only in the south perhaps, kinda. Driving south, the weather turned more warm. Thoughts and feelings continued to swarm. Broke and sickly with a slight frame, broke as a joke drove Sicklybod Crane. Now 600 miles due south he did tread, where in the wood piles the snakes fed, not on the attack unless they were disturbed, until the attack hitting every nerve. Reaching North Carolina, now back to his home, where up to his teens Sicklybod did roam. Born just a frail kid called Tommy, always a pain, he was always sneezing and sniffling. The kids named him Sicklybod Crane. Down a dirt road full of hickory and sycamore trees where Sicklybod traveled to school slowly. All the kids teased. On weekends he would go down to the river. On weekdays after school he was a paper boy, for money that would always deliver. Going down the road of his childhood, a time of his history that he barely understood, his long-lost relative of long-ago fame, of Sleepy Hollow named Ichabod Crane. All his family were glad he had come back, but it was only for one night. No time to unpack. He had come to learn the mystery, to learn more of the family history. His father and mother showed him a book of his family tree of all the past Cranes back to 1603. The first Cranes were farmers who planted the sod, but then one became a teacher named Ichabod. Sickly sneezed with a loud kazoo. He was so shocked that the legend might just be true. For in the book was a painting of a skinny chap with a long nose and a colonial hat. He sat upon a sickly horse with a sly grin that was not forced. Last seen, on a long past Halloween, only a smashed pumpkin was found at the scene. When Sicklybod told his parents where he was going, in the very town the book was showing, the parents both shook their heads no. They begged him to stay and not to go. His father said, "Look at what happened to your great uncle in that town. That Headless Horseman may still be around, just waiting and hoping for another Crane, chasing you with his sword down the lane." Sicklybod didn't blink, not once in fear. He just hugged his mother and father so dear, and headed north toward Sleepy Hollow. In the steps of his great times, for uncle he would follow. On the I-95, he felt the breeze. October's coolness made him feel at ease. He did not fear a headless man, he just headed north as fast as truck can. Past countrysides, past cities and towns, stopping for gas. Things were looking up, not down. Part 4: Arrival and the Pumpkin Pie. Now firmly north, fall was in the air. Leaves turning color, yellow and orange leaves littered. Beautiful beyond compare. Along the Hudson River, Halloween will be here soon. Finally reaching the village of Sleepy Hollow. Under the light of a full moon, the lights were low, the old bridges were endlessly pretty. It was a world away from the huge buildings of New York City. History was all around. Ghostly headless images everywhere were seen. Truly, Sleepy Hollow was the capital of Halloween. He was tired and hungry from the long drive. He reluctantly called his parents, telling them he made it alive. His eyes were so sleepy. He needed a nap. He pulled to the side of the road, stopping the car, closing his eyes, pulling down his cap. About an hour in, he was awakened by a roar, the screeching of wheels right outside his truck door. Looking outside his window, it appeared in a flash. A red Lamborghini Diablo rattled his dash. Sicklybod barely got a look before it sped away, his mouth wide open with nothing to say. Then, to Sickly's shock and surprise, he saw a sight that might mean his demise. He pictured himself in the back of a hearse when that Lamborghini Diablo went into reverse. Suddenly, the vehicle was right next to his Ford. Sickly didn't want to look, but it couldn't be ignored. The windows were dark. You could barely see the driver. He had only been in town 1 hour. He owed it to his parents to be a survivor. Then he heard a laugh, as if from the devil, from the driver. Scary on the highest level. Through the darkened windows with the black tint, the sinister laugh gave him a hint. He could see the shoulders, but there was clearly no head. Suddenly, every ounce of Sicklybod was full of dread. Was this the same headless ghost who chased his great-uncle down, and sent to finish him too? After only an hour in town? Sickly closed his eyes. He said, "This can't be true. It's just a guy in a costume pretending to be a ghost that goes boo." Suddenly the driver threw an object up in the sky, and on Sicklybod's windshield splattered a pumpkin pie. Whipped cream and cinnamon covered the windshield, but it was far better than being killed. He turned on his wipers, but that was a mistake. It just spread everywhere. He thought the legend did not ever mention the Headless Horseman could bake. Sickly couldn't see through all the whipped cream. He heard the Diablo speed away, as if it was a bad dream. He got his water bottle from the back of his truck and poured it onto the windshield. In places, pieces of the pumpkin pie were stuck. Now the windshield was somewhat clean. He got in his truck, thinking that the driver was mean. He drove to a nearby open gas station, still with whipped cream on his wipers, so tired he could barely see his location. Taking the squeegee, cleaning the rest of the pumpkin pie, he went in to talk to the gas station guy. The gas station attendant said to Sicklybod, "Whoa, what happened to you?" Reluctantly, Sickly said, "Listen, this story is true." He told the story of the Diablo that tore down the lane, and the headless driver, and how his great times four uncle was Ichabod Crane. The gas station worker just listened, as Sicklybod's tired eyes grew more hazy, quickly concluding that this man was crazy. Calling the police, they came to question the man, arresting Sicklybod and throwing him into the can. They then took him to the mental ward, towing his car, his '57 Ford. For 3 days they questioned him on what he had seen. Finally, he was released. 2 days from Halloween. Luckily, his friend got paid all his fines. Reuniting Sicklybod with his truck, he was happy to help his friend when he was down on his luck. His friend told him, "Sickly, don't tell that tale. They'll think you're insane." Now more sternly, "You're in Sleepy Hollow now. Quit telling people you're related to Ichabod Crane." Sicklybod was grateful, there's no doubt, but he looked at his friend and said, "Look, I have to find out." Part 5. The 400 headless horsepower man. Sicklybod looked more serious. Before again he spoke. "For over 200 years, this is the mystery of my missing uncle. It gave my great times four grandmother a stroke. For hundreds of years, they passed down the story of their legendary uncle that disappeared with no glory. His horse found without a rider at Headless Horseman Bridge. The people searched the forest, the mountains, and the ridge. Only a smashed pumpkin was left from a lit jack-o'-lantern. No trace of Ichabod, either killed by the ghost or abducted by aliens from Saturn. His friend, who went by the nickname Jimmy John, shook his head, but he knew Sicklybod was not putting him on. Sickly looked ill, sneezing and freezing. Jimmy John laughed at his friend and couldn't help do some teasing. Look, Sickly, Jimmy John said. It's only a made-up story. There is no headless horseman seeking heads for glory. Get over it. It was just a guy pulling a Halloween prank. Hey, at least you got a free pumpkin pie out of it. Relax, I even filled up your gas tank. Sicklybod didn't crack a smile, but said, Okay, maybe you're right. But if you could see what I saw the other night, surely there must be someone in this town who can tell me if the headless ghost is still around. Jimmy John looked at Sickly and let out a sigh, shaking his head before he gave his reply. Tom Brombones tells the story each Halloween, always insisting the story is true. But he's young, brash, handsome, and mean. That is it, Sickly said. I will speak to him. His eyes brightened up from being so dim. As sickly as Sicklybod did look, all the ladies adored him, like his great times four uncle, the schoolteacher Ichabod in the book. Jimmy John set Sickly up with a good job. Sicklybod pledged no more living like a slob. Now in Sleepy Hollow in his own apartment, happy now, no need to call the compliant department. Tom Brombones' family had lived in Sleepy Hollow for hundreds of years, and every Halloween he told the Headless Horseman story, scaring partygoers to tears. Tom Brombones was a rich man's son, driving a Porsche, always making fun, fast, brash, always a bully. At every gathering he was unruly. He had lots of girlfriends who dumped him for being rude. There was even a website about him, flashing the headline, Don't date this dude. Tom was so cocky, a man no one could humble, except for one young woman who made him stumble. Also from a rich family, her home vast, as big as a castle, a gorgeous lady named Melina Van Tassel. Tom prepared for the party excitedly. He swore he would dance with Melina all through the night. Remembering last time he asked, Melina said, Tom, go fly a kite. Part 6. The party, the chase, and the bridge. Sicklybod, too, put on some cologne, ready to mingle with locals from his new home. Not having lots of money to buy a costume, he just put on his jail jumpsuit he still had in the closet of his room. The guards let him keep it as a souvenir. It was the perfect thing to wear now that Halloween was here. The party was held at the village hall. All the villagers gathered, the best Halloween party Sicklybod ever saw. Everyone stopped the festivities when Sicklybod entered the room with his orange jail jumpsuit. The ladies' hearts were all doomed. All the ladies surrounded him wanting to dance. Sicklybod thinking, I guess I'm irresistible in this bright orange jumpsuit, shirt, and pants. Flattered, he smiled, promising all the ladies a turn. Then, turning to his rear, he saw a sight that made his heart burn. In walked Melina, dressed like a bunny. She was breathtakingly beautiful. The outfit was hysterically funny. He at once found himself across the room, drawn to her eyes, like he ran over in a zoom. Melina looked him up quizzingly, judging him up and down almost dismissively, thinking, Who is this clown? But her second look changed that first impression. There was something beyond Sicklybod's droopy expression. Melina said, What happened to you? Did you just escape from jail? You might just be a vampire. Your skin is so pale. Inside both hearts, feelings ran. Clearly, a new love story began. Tom Brombones looked all over the party, bragging to his friends, eating hearty. Then he saw a sight that made his heart weak. He saw his true love, Melina, dancing with a geek. Tom was dressed like a skeleton, since his last name was Bones. He was angry that another guy was dancing with someone he wanted for his own. He ran to the punch bowl, scooped up a drink, hurling it across the floor, but it missed Sicklybod Crane and hit a man by the door. To his horror, Tom was forced to stop, because the one drenched in punch was Sleepy Hollow's top cop. Melina and Sicklybod just laughed. At this skeleton, Melina said, You've done it now, Tom. And Tom's legs were gelatin. Tom apologized enough to stay out of jail, but he wasn't done with the couple. He vowed not to fail. He tried cutting in, stopping the music in time, but the couple ignored him, still dancing fine. Tom grew furious. jealousy howling like a loon. It was almost time for his Sleepy Hollow bit soon. Tom's last attempt to stop the new love connection to take, he tried to push the couple into the Halloween cake, but this jealous guy slipped and fell into it himself, getting cake and frosting, looking like a Christmas elf. The anger, the frosting, humiliated, shaking, he cleaned himself off, Tom's pride breaking. But Tom had one job to do that night, to make the partygoers shake with fright. For in the Headless Horseman, Tom Brom was a believer. He said those who denied it were the deceivers. Now clean, but still blushing red, he grabbed the mic and loudly said he juiced up a new tale from this very year that would send the partygoers away in fear. The lights were lowered to barely a dim, the candlelights flickered, everyone was focused on him. Melina grabbed Sicklybod's hand, telling him to come follow. Smiling, she then said, "Come, let's go hear Tom tell the story of Sleepy Hollow." Tom went up to the microphone to warn all the partygoers what they could be facing on their way home. He said, "You are not facing the same Headless Horseman like you did in the past. He traded in that horse into something 5 times as fast. I saw him 3 times in my Porsche. He is not afraid to be seen speeding in a Lamborghini Diablo, not just on Halloween." Tom Bones ordered another drink from the fridge and said as he drank his ale quickly, "One thing hasn't changed. Head for the bridge. Still, that bridge is your protection. Head directly there. Follow this direction." Sicklybod gulped and raised his hand. Tom Bones sighed, motioning to the man, still disgusted that this guy had danced with Melina. Tom wanted to challenge Sicklybod to a fight in the arena, but it wasn't the place. It wasn't the time. He would answer the question like he didn't mind. He answered, "What is your question, my new friend? Do you need a lift to the jail before your parole ends?" Yea, the crowd just laughed, noticing Sicklybod's jumpsuit. Sicklybod said, "No, it's just a costume. No need for a police pursuit." Then Sicklybod swallowed hard and began to recall the most frightening thing he ever saw. Headless man, driving a bright red sports car, making a mess near and far. Everyone laughed, but Tom did not, saying, "You are lucky to have survived when others did not." He then menacingly began again instead, "Well, you're lucky to get away with your head. He is not one to give any breaks. Next time your soul he may take." Tom looked at Sicklybod and said, "Please, sir, tell me your name. We can write a book together, bringing you fame. You experienced the ghost, and he let you live. You, my friend, must have something great to give." Sicklybod seemed proud before he did reply, thinking that Tom Bones was his kind of guy. He spoke up so proud he didn't refrain. He stood up and said, "Well, I was born a Tom too, but I go by Sicklybod Crane." The crowd roared with laughter. Tom did too, saying, "Look, another Crane is here with us. Ichabod Part 2. Then he looked serious, and the crowd was all hushed and spoke some words that left Sicklybod crushed. Looking right into Sicklybod's eyes with a fierce look, he said, "There is another chapter that was left out of the book, that if another descendant of Ichabod Crane comes to Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman will reign, not upon a horse, but a fast carriage fiery red. And that descendant, like Ichabod, will end up dead." Sicklybod shook with fright, as the party was now over, agreeing to take Melina home in his '57 Ford. Clearly it was no Range Rover. Though still nervous, Sicklybod from Melina got a kiss goodbye and a promise of a next date, Melina saying, "Sicklybod, you're my kind of guy." It was approaching midnight as he headed home. Halloween was nearly over. Dark and decorated streets his '57 Ford roamed. From the forest he could smell the scent from the pines. Still smiling, thinking about how Melina Van Tassel is all mine. The moonlight barely lit the tall tree-forested curve as all the switchbacks Sicklybod continued to swerve. The forest seemed to all come alive, the hoots from the owls sounding above his engine as he did drive. Sicklybod then swerved as he saw a deer. His '57 Ford barely did clear, evading the animal. Sicklybod gave off a laugh. He began to relax, but soon realized his gaffe, for there in rear, as he looked in the mirror, was a sight full of fright that could not be any clearer. Sicklybod gave a nod as he did don his beanie, because there right behind him was the same red Lamborghini. Sicklybod was in a panic. He was frantic. He remembered to head for the bridge fast. If you reach the bridge, the headless ghost power cannot last. Sicklybod instinctively hit the gas. The V8 engine roared loudly. The truck took off fast. Sicklybod knew he couldn't hang. From the radio, Bob Marley's Everything Gonna Be All Right sang. He tried to listen to the song, singing Everything is Gonna Be All Right, but no one could do that with the headless 400 horsepower man in sight. He looked behind him, magic just like Houdini. Always behind me was the red Diablo Lamborghini. The race car was engulfed in flame. Forward, to the side, behind him it was the same. Sometimes right next to him, as Sicklybod's '57 Ford sped, the headless ghost swung a sword toward his head. Braking hard, the headless ghost hit air. The headless spirit's temper did flare. In frustration, the headless ghost started throwing mini pumpkin pies, the whipped cream, the cinnamon, the nutmeg got into Sicklybod's eyes. Sicklybod started to sneeze. His gas tank was nearly empty. Eased, he thought of his uncle from long ago. 235 years, it was the same show. At 95 miles an hour, Sicklybod coming around the bend, chased by a headless ghost. Sicklybod's life he wanted to end. Darting back and forth, one hand on the wheel, the other a sword. The Lamborghini was way too much for his '57 Ford. Suddenly, the truck's engine started to mutter like a long, slowly dying noise. The '57 Ford stopped with clutter. Sicklybod was in panic, but he could see the bridge was close by, a few hundred yards away. He had to make it on foot. He had to try. The red sports car now stopped and parked next to him, right beside. Headlights were on bright. Sicklybod could see the headless driver inside. Sicklybod gathered all the courage, for this was the time to be brave. He knew that only going on the attack would save him from a headless grave. Sicklybod clenched his fists tightly. He was willing to fight. He was not willing to go silently into the night. He gathered a full water bottle he had in his backpack, some full pudding packs, and half-eaten chocolate he had as a snack. Sicklybod counted slowly, 1, 2, 3. On the third count, donning his backpack, his truck, he did flee. He did not go into the woods. He went right for the car, pelting the occupant with pudding and a half-eaten melted candy bar. The headless driver opened the door in a pudding chocolate-like mess. Angrily looking at his uniform, his ghostly appearance stained would not impress. Chocolate covered his medals, his officers. His fearsome presence shrank. The headless 400 horsepower man howled with his sharp sword and charged at Sicklybod, who was nearly gored. He then ran for the forest, hiding behind a tree, thinking, with no head, how could this ghost see? Sicklybod darted and dashed, following trail, breathing so heavily, loudly he exhaled. He listened to the woods, to every sound. He heard owls and the running spring. No headless spirit was around. Sicklybod then made his move, as fast as he had ever run. Made his way to the bridge like a shot from a gun. Now on the road he thought he was home free. Then he looked back and said, "Oh, this is the end of me." Barreling down the road, determined to make a hit, was the headless ghost from the Lamborghini Diablo. With fire it did spit. Sicklybod zigged, and then quickly did zag. The sword barely missed Sicklybod's head. His hopes lagged. He looked toward the bridge and could not believe his eyes. There seemed two objects on the bridge. One was horse size. He then ducked to avoid another sword swipe. He did not know what was this headless ghost's gripe. The figures on the bridge were clearly glowing. Sicklybod realized what it was, somehow knowing it was the ghost of his great times for Uncle Ichabod Crane and his horse Gunpowder that came into frame. The ghostly uncle waved him on, yelling, "Come on, my son. Remember, once you reach the bridge, the headless horsepower man's power is done." Running so fast, but needing to know, Sicklybod yelled back, "What became of you, Ichabod? Never again your face you did show." Ichabod's ghost didn't answer. Sicklybod was near the bridge wood floor, but the headless ghost followed as he did before. Sicklybod wasn't going to make it, that was clear. Ichabod mounted Gunpowder as he grew near. Finally, before the race car was ready to plow, Ichabod charged, hoping to help somehow. The race car then stopped in dead its tracks, seeing his former victim on the attack. Just right then Sicklybod reached the bridge, crossing it quickly, shivering like he was in the fridge. Sicklybod, thinking he was safe, decided to look back. "No, Sicklybod," his ghostly uncle yelled before hearing the smack. The next day, all the town did search. People prayed for Sicklybod in the church, fearing this man had met the same fate of his great times four uncle at a modern date. At Headless Horseman Bridge, all they found was a smashed pumpkin pie. What did it mean? Everyone wanted to know. Why? The police detective put his finger in the goo and said, "Another legend is born or in the make. One thing rings clear. This headless ghost can surely bake." Epilogue. Far away. In the afterworld, a trial began. Sicklybod and Ichabod's lawsuit was unfurled. The headless 400 horsepower man had cheated again. When a victim reaches the bridge, the chase, it was to come to an end. They won the lawsuit, but not a money reward. A true justice in time they scored. That this means this spirit would spend another 100 years with no head, tearing down the road, looking for another one instead. For the headless 400 horsepower man still rides the Sleepy Hollow roads. There is nowhere to hide. The end.